from out from under the soil in the earth, breaking through the rocks, growing wild and tall till the buds begin to pop. So pack me in a bowl or roll me in a spliff. While you're breaking me down, you can feel your fingers stick.
Hello and welcome to The Smoking Spot, a really good podcast about weed. I'm Ryan Herron in Portland, Oregon.
And I'm Amanda Breeze in Toronto. And on today's episode of The Smoking Spot, we are discussing spicy, peppery, Beta Caryophyllenes strains, the works.
We're talking heat. We're talking all of the things that we can't really hype it up too much more. It is just a terpene.
Yeah, we're talking about all these things, but we forgot to use words. It's all good.
That could possibly be because I in our pre-show and now our real show, our show, I've been smoking on some Larry Bubba, a really beta C dominant profile that I'm enjoying here from the Resin Ranchers dudes. And
Resin Ranchers.
We're audio only, but I'm going to hold up some of this beautiful weed for Amanda to.
Okay, I'll judge it for all the listeners.
Yes. Give our listeners a
wow. Stunning.
Holding the weed upside down. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's such a beautiful color.
Yes. Yeah. Really nice trichome coverage. So yeah, I'm just loving this. It's really Bubba dominant. So it's got all of that crazy, peppery, funky, like sour almost type notes. And then the Larry comes in and gives it like that excellent silver sheen, trichome coverage, a little extra like sweet gas diesel thing going. So, hey, we were talking about this a week or two ago on how we enjoy these profiles. We're looking at the wheel like, hey, let's really focus in on one of these little segments. And spicy came up and we just went, yep, that's it. And we just have been running with it ever since. And so that's what I've been smoking on, like, since we got excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the spicy category of cannabis seems really obvious, but I actually think it's a really subtle flavor profile in my experience. And this is definitely one of those moments where I'm like so stoked that you're in the States, in Portland. I'm here in Toronto because I feel like you have a lot more experience with it because you guys do deli style. So you're able to like really explore more smells before you pick which strain you want to buy that day or try, and I think that I'm jealous. I'm actually jealous.
I can do the 31 flavors thing where I step up to the front of the line and I go, oh, could I smell that jar? Oh, can I smell this one? And I'd actually like to smell that one too. I could then just leave and be like, I just got a free education. Haha. I mean, typically after I get my nose in a few jars, I'm buying some weed, but like it is a nice luxury that I can go and like practice with the smells and find something like, oh, this Gorilla Glue is fresh as hell. And it smells exactly what I want it to smell like. And I'm taking that. I felt pretty nose blind up in Washington over the holidays buying weed because like you said, it's all sealed up.
Yeah. So I think it plays a role into like understanding how spicy a spice can be. And if we do a little throwback to our episode with David Downs when he was talking about the chili verde, and I lost my shit because I was like, there's no fucking way that there's a strain that tastes like chili verde. And there is, like, we're still on the fruity cookie stream of things here. Which I love. So that, don't get me wrong. But it makes it harder to find some of these spicier things. I also just think like the spice notes are just challenging to highlight. And so for me, like when I first started doing aromatherapy and working with essential oils, black pepper was actually one of the ones that really piqued my interest because most essential oils are like flowers and leaves. Black pepper just tends like everyone knows lavender, everyone knows orange, everyone knows, jasmine, but how often do you go into, a pharmacy and see black pepper essential oil? So that caught my eye from day one. And the thing about the smell of it is it's subtle. It's really, really subtle. It's so spicy and very clearly pepper. I've also seen pink peppercorn. And again, that's another peppery essential oil that's very uncommon. So yeah, anyway, it's just an exciting thing. And it took a little bit of time for me to sort of train my nose. It's spicy, but soft.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we were talking about in the pre-show was this is kind of our chance to talk about heat a little bit. Like I'm thinking capsaicin, in that it will light up your mouth or your skin or your eyes or whatever you're touching, which I don't really feel like is found in cannabis. Like the trichomes can be irritating, especially if you're allergic or mildly allergic to them. But there's not anything we get where you get that actual like burning sensation.
That is very true.
But so we're here in spicy in the corner. I don't know if everyone is familiar. Like Amanda and I created the cannabis aroma wheel. You can read all about it and get your own on Centelligenceproject.com. But it's the most thorough tasting wheel for cannabis. And we devoted an entire wedge of our earthy corner of the wheel to spicy. And it's relatively small. It's anise, black pepper, cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, and cumin. And then that butts up against the funk section and the herbaceous section. So you can kind of see that's where spicy lies as far as where we would put it on the wheel, in between those things. We thought a lot about it. I feel like that's, if we thought about it for another 100 hours, it would still live in that corner in my mind. And so, yeah, spicy to me lives in this area in between funky and earthy herbaceous. And for you it does too, because I mean, we talked a lot about it. So I don't know, let's kind of talk about that range of scents there and where they do live in weed.
Oh, I'm just pulling over my aroma wheel. I got a sigh because it's movie poster sized and framed. Just dragging it over.
Amanda's gonna wheel hers in.
Yeah, I just got a wheel in the wheel. Yeah, it's interesting because that was actually a section that I really struggled with, because I do think that a lot of spice flavor does come from the beta caryophylline, also maybe a touch of terpene, also maybe a touch of like VSCs, the volatile sulfur compounds come into play. Like there's quite a few different aromatic compounds that come into this spicy section. And like you're saying, we did center it between herbaceous and funk. We did put it in the earthy family, but it was tough because clove, cinnamon, like these are earthy. Cinnamon is an earthy flavor.
Yeah.
Clove is a very earthy flavor, but they're also kind of funky. And that's why it kind of lands. So once you go down the list, it goes into like weird shit. So we get into like garlic, the wild leek, down towards the blue cheese. So the spice is leaning into that gas funk. And I kind of like that it sort of lives in this strange place.
Me too. Like freshly grated nutmeg, which is like on the spicy end of funky, gives you that sort of gassy soma nose tickling thing. And also it has that funkiness in that way that you want to lean closer and get like, oh, can I get a little bit more of that if I get closer to it type thing? So yeah, I really thought that it was kind of like a fun way to lay that out. And it kind of gives you an idea when you're smelling something. You're like, oh, damn, I'm really getting garlic on this. And you're like, ooh, I don't know. Garlic to me is a little sharper. It's a little deeper in my nostrils. This is kind of reading a little bit more like I'm getting some, like, I don't know, leek and clove or something. And those two things combined kind of give me like a garlicky vibe, or at least garlic exists between those two.
Which makes sense because that's our volatile sulfur compounds. And that is the same compounds that give onions and garlic their smell. And then, of course, the same compounds that give weed its skunk smell. That's why it, sort of blew up last year, was the identifying the skunk spray, stink, the funk. Now, I think we put skunk spray more into the funk. So it leans down. But that whole section is arguably like a nice little... It's like a cousin. You know what I mean? They're like cousins of the other smells.
Yeah. Skunk lives a little closer to gas and chem on our wheel here.
So have you come across, I want to hear about like the Portland experience. Like what have you come across that really stands out that in that spice category?
It was fun when we first started doing terpene tests here, and that consumers decided that that was something they wanted. And we were still testing for like 10 terpenes or 14, a pretty basic set. Things have gotten a little more complex now, but it was relatively easy to see if something was myrcene dominant. Oh, okay, that's the highest percentage of terpenes on there. Limonene dominant, or beta C. And that was always the outlier that I looked for. Like every now and then you'd see something that was maybe alpha pinene dominant or terpenylene. But those were the main three, especially with like what the Oregon market like wanted to smoke at that time. So it was kind of nice to just be able to, especially with concentrates, go and pick out something that, I keep coming back to glue because Gorilla Glue #4. That's like the beta caryophylline dominant cultivar that I would reach for as like, here's my example, because it does smell sour. It does have that kind of like halitosis body odor funk to it. But I think that you can crack that next to some black pepper, and anyone with like a decent nose could compare the two and say like, oh yeah, these are pretty similar.
Interestingly, I think that's actually where black pepper essential oil kind of plays like a good role in the art of learning smells, because I think cracked pepper, although, okay, how do I explain it? Of course, the essential oil is going to smell like the thing, but they're slightly different. And I kind of like that about it, because black pepper is that sneezy, we sneeze. Like if you crack pepper and then take a waft, you're going to be sneezy. But the essential oil hits a little bit different, but still carries those notes forward. And I think that's a little bit of a point of confusion for people when we say spicy or peppery, that you think straight up cracked pepper. It's going to be a little bit subtler than that. And that's what makes it such an interesting flavor profile. And even though a strain could be dominant beta caryophylline, that peppery flavor aromatic is probably very subtle nonetheless.
Right. I think that it's not super impactful. So even though it could be the dominant terpene in the profile by percentage, that doesn't mean 100% this is going to smell like that, especially if there's anything that has like a larger presence like limonene or something like that in it.
And I love that you said that. That is exactly how I feel about it. I don't think it's aromatically as impactful as you would expect it to be, but the magic of it is its impact physiologically. So when used topically, when inhaled, and I think at some point in this episode, we're going to get into beta caryophylline and all of the roles that it plays.
Oh yeah, it's a pretty interesting terpene to specifically talk about. I think like it's so weird that pepper has become like omnipresent on every table in every restaurant in America. Now that's gone away for a little bit, but especially back in the day, I remember kid of the 90s, the little black and white salt and pepper shakers that were everywhere. And that was pre-ground pepper, maybe even like pre-ground at a factory.
Right.
It's so dead by the time it's hitting your plate. Like honestly, like the reason pepper is so enticing to everyone is because it does kind of like wake up your taste buds a little bit. It gets your saliva going. It's kind of prickly in your mouth. So it adds like a whole extra sensation. And in a lot of ways, like gets you ready to enjoy whatever you're about to get into. So I kind of feel like translating that over to cannabis is like, oh, maybe that little added touch like wakes up your taste buds a little bit. Maybe it's like kind of increasing your ability to taste things. Maybe it's kind of like the MSG of weed. And the fresher, the better, because we know if it just sits there on the table, like all of that goodness is just going away.
Okay, so are you a pepper guy? Like when you make food, are you peppering?
Oh, yes. I've got my pepper grinder set to rough grind because I like some big chonky. In fact, this is just probably my only chance to say, oh, I'm a heat seeker. I'm like putting the heavy spice on everything. I would like to sweat at every meal. And that's like breakfast. If I could make this coffee I'm drinking spicier, I probably would. And from what I can tell, from what everyone says, we don't we're not born with like a biological appreciation for things that hurt us, like spicy foods. It's like a learned thing. And I don't know, there's some evidence to the contrary. Like in certain Latin countries where spice is like prevalent, you'll see like dogs will naturally eat like spicy peppers and seem to be like burning their mouth up with it and will continue to do so. So it's like a thing that whether it's like learned or, you know, we have some like innate ability to want to burn ourselves up, like the love for pepper is there. And hey, I've caught the bug.
Damn, I'm so bland. I'm feeling real bland right now.
I mean, what can we do to spice you up?
Yeah, sometimes I'll toss a little sprinkle of cayenne in my coffee. I was gonna throw that out there for you. A little cayenne sprinkle when you're doing your French press or like a drip coffee. I think it's kind of nice. Every once in a while, I'll toss a little sprinkle of that in.
A little throat burn sounds like
just like a little touch,
trick.
a little pep. Because I feel like hot with hot, like hot coffee with a little hot spice, really does wake up the senses. I think we should both just try the pepper coffee real quick.
Yeah, let's pause the show real quick. We're gonna go and chomp down on a pepper. No, well, Amanda was even saying she's more the type to be like covered in something spicy and use it more like a topical than be like munching it. So hey, who knows? Maybe you're spicier than I am.
You know, that's very true. So I will say I always use black pepper essential oil in my topical products that are formulated for pain relief or often anti-inflammatory. So I think that it does play a really important role in analgesic blends, pain relieving blends. And I never make a blend without it. It's actually quite a staple in my collection. And it's costly, I will say, because, you know, pepper's not particularly oily. So because it's not oily, you need more to produce the oil, but it's worth it. Even a few drops makes a major difference. And I feel like lately I've been getting some really great feedback on one of my best selling body care products, which is a turmeric and THCA infused balm or salve. I don't know, same thing. So it's basically wax and oil mixed together into a solid. And I think it's the combination turmeric, which is a heavy anti-inflammatory, mixed with my, proprietary analgesic essential oil blend, which is like 10 different oils, more than I would normally use, but because it's designed for acute pain relief, I wanted to really get everything in there.
Yeah, hit it from all angles.
Spicy. It leans to the spicy. I also use ginger root in that blend, which is another spice family.
Nice. Can you talk more about how beta C tends to act on the CB1 and CB2 receptors in the similar way that a cannabinoid would? Like, I know that beta C is especially helpful in certain topicals because of the way it reacts with our receptors.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing about beta caryophylline that's been studies have been slowly building on this. I wouldn't say it's come out with certainty, but this is sort of where the industry, cannabis scientists are leaning towards. Okay, so I won't say this is 100% proven fact yet, but this is definitely a conversation that's been ongoing for the past couple years regarding beta caryophylline, which is that many people believe it's both a terpene and a cannabinoid. And so because it's falling into the cannabinoid category, that means that it is interacting with our ECS. It's interacting with the part of the ECS that regulates our functions like pain perception and inflammation when it's interacting with our olfactory system. So that's the thing. When we're talking about there's aromatherapy and then there's holistic aromatherapy, and holistic aromatherapy means you put it on your body. So you're both absorbing it topically. And as we know, the skin is one of our largest CB2 receptors. And so that's a great way to absorb a lot of topical products and therapeutic actions of the topical products. But once it's on your skin, you're also smelling it. And that's what makes it holistic aromatherapy, because it's being absorbed while you're still interacting with it as well, your olfactory system. So yeah, it's technically considered an atypical cannabinoid. As we all know, the classics are THC, CBD, CBN, but beta caryophylline was discovered to be one of the first non-typicals or non-classical. And basically, this is a group of cannabinoids that interact through our ECS with unique mechanisms. They often have different effects and properties compared to the classics. And so it's become an intriguing area of study for cannabis research because a lot of the ECS is still not completely understood. You know, we've had limited ability to study cannabis due to it being illegal. So yeah, this is a whole new area. And this also may impact our immune cells, psychoactive effects of THC. So there's just like this whole area of research we're at the tip of the iceberg on this. They're also considering beta caryophylline to be a dietary cannabinoid. This is because it's also consumed in food.
Yes.
Whole other
Right. And we know we have tons of cannabinoid receptors in our digestive system.
yes.
So, hey, maybe that's another reason black pepper is on every table in the United States is because, oh, it makes me feel good. So I'm going to keep putting it on my food, you know?
I mean, it is anti-inflammatory, so that does make sense. And we do eat a lot of beta caryophylline rich foods as part of a regular diet. So aside from black pepper, like hops, cloves, rosemary, like a lot of herbs are quite rich in this compound. And so in that sense, they can also be incorporated into sort of like your wellness routine. Also, like black pepper and turmeric are sort of sisters, right? A lot of people who use turmeric for its anti-inflammatory actions, again, topically as well as internally through food, combine it with beta caryophylline rich black pepper to make the turmeric more effective. So it just plays this crazy number of roles within our body. And I think that's actually very, very cool.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an absorption enhancer, right? I think that's like what we kind of keep talking about, right? Keep coming back around to in the many ways that it is. So in the same way, we've seen that myrcene can help compounds cross that blood-brain barrier. I think that this compound is also coming in and doing like a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of like backdoor opening and letting the other compounds in, you know, the sort of thing that's like making your cannabis, your compounds, your topical, maybe your breakfast burrito more effective, more tasty. It's just amping things up a little bit. And, you know, hey, if you're a frequent cannabis smoker, like that's we're here. Right? Like,
so if you're into kind of like lazy girl wellness, you know, that's kind of my vibe where I'm like, oh, if I sprinkle a little turmeric or add some fennel or burdock root is like a go-to for me because it feels so fancy, but it's really just like you feel like a self-care moment, even though it's just making dinner. So sometimes I like to think about it in that sense. You're like, okay, we're going to sprinkle. And I know I said I'm not a pepper girl, but I've been coming around and I've been fresh grinding it when I'm making something special. So I actually really do like the act of, I have a mortar and pestle. So also adds to this like whole moment where I'm grinding.
Ritualistic grinding. Yes.
I'm tapping into the ancestors. I'm tapping into like all of the witches before me grinding in their little cauldrons. You know, it's a whole moment for me. But aside from my imagination, it actually is doing many, many things because beta caryophylline, despite the fact that we don't have a lot of research on it being a potential cannabinoid, there is a ton of research on its physiological actions in our body. It's been well documented as an anti-inflammatory, especially for chronic health conditions. And I think it's nice to like highlight the difference between acute and chronic. I tried to do it during the Valentine's episode, but I wasn't quite getting the message across. But acute is like you cut yourself, you're hurt, it happened. Chronic is like my knees have hurt for 20 years. Chronic is like an ongoing pain. And so anything that's treating chronic pain is so important for people to be consuming because it's also a preventative. And then of course, pain relief, again, interacting with CB2 dispensers, receptors, offering very natural pain relief, again, for chronic pain. That's people with chronic pain often end up heavy painkillers, right? Because nothing makes it go away. And so I love this idea that Beta Caryophylline can actually be really, really effective. Stress and anxiety. Of course, it has anti-anxiety effects. It's extremely grounding, extremely calming. We often use it in aromatherapy to assist with people that have high chronic anxiety. And then gastrointestinal health. You got to keep your tummy happy. That's
just, you know what? Just stand over me with the pepper grinder, grind it directly into my mouth. I will say when I'm done. Right. But really, I'm going to be a snob here. White pepper, I cannot do.
Oh.
Yeah, no, it's maybe. All right. I joke that I'm a super taster. I've not taken the test. If there is a grind of white pepper in something, I can detect it. And I'm like, I can't do this. All right.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. To me, it smells so terrible. Yeah. It smells like, let's not get into it. Not a fan. Also, I don't like pink peppercorns that much, especially with the little papery shells on them. I tried to do a pink peppercorn bar for when I had my chocolate company, and it was such a damn mess with these little pink shells that would just flake off everything. And honestly, it's not a real pepper. You grind it up, it's sort of peppery, but nowhere near what we're getting on that like long pepper Chinese medicine oomph. So it's a pretender. You can cross it off.
I'm shocked, Ryan. I'm shocked. What I don't know how to say this, but like I would have taken you for a pink peppercorn guy.
Right. You know what? They're pretty. You can put them on my cupcake because I'm not going to eat that thing either. It's too sweet.
Podcast is canceled. We're out of here.
Canceled. No cupcakes for anybody.
Cupcakes. Great.
You don't get one. Yeah. So there's a lot of pretenders out there. You got to give me the real stuff. Go get yourself a macro picture of a peppercorn. They're all wrinkly and veined and geographical. They look like a planet that we should be visiting.
Of my topicals, THCA turmeric featuring beta caryophylline and my analgesic blend. I have had people use that balm and tell me it is the only thing that has ever worked for their chronic pain. Full stop. And this isn't a low-key brag. This is me hyping up the Beta C. It has nothing to do with me. I know I put the ingredients together. I know I strategized a formula, but genuinely, I 100% attribute that to the presence of beta caryophylline in that product. People who have lived with chronic pain, who have tried everything, and they're like, this is the only thing that works. And these are my regulars. They're buying a batch monthly. So I really stand by its effectiveness for chronic pain relief. I really do.
There's a reason that people who tend to use cannabis more medicinally for things like pain and have transitioned off of opiate type medicines tend to reach for things that are more relaxing and sedative. Like, I remember working at the dispensary behind the counter, the people that would come in and reach for these kind of like spicy, more aggressive strains tend to be the people who also like came in with a cane and were buying an ounce type of thing. I think that when you find something that is effective and really works, like you're talking about, you just connect with it and go, oh, great, I found my thing that works. Like if it's relieving in any way, then it's helpful. And I will devote whatever resources I need to making sure this thing happens, Absolutely. And I think it's kind of cool. You were talking about the sort of cookies and milk profile that dominates the shelves there. It does here as well. But because we do get some like, oh, hey, I'm throwing this one in the garden because this one's for me sort of thing. I think we get a little more of that like popping up. And many of the strains that people are growing at home or people that are devoting space to in their garden, not because it's going to sell, but because they really enjoy smoking it, are often things that they get medicinal relief from as well. It's like, oh yeah, you guys are still keeping that Durban around. It doesn't seem that popular anymore. It's like, yeah, man, that's the thing that like helps me focus all day at work. Of course, I'm going to keep growing it.
Yeah, this is actually a topic we're going to bring up in an upcoming episode because that paper on just came out on ADHD and cannabis.
Yes.
And it really, over the recent years, I've been thinking a lot about recreational versus medicinal use of cannabis. And I've been smoking since I was a teenager, so it's been about 20 years. I always took myself as a recreational cannabis user, but I actually think I'm using it therapeutically to treat some things. Like I have bad tummy, I have poor attention. And like, I think over the years, it's evolved to actually be part of my medicine cabinet more so than the recreational way that I always thought I was using it. Like it's like when medicine tastes good. Right? You're like, oh, this doesn't even taste like medicine. It doesn't feel like I'm taking medicine. That is genuinely how I feel about smoking pot these days. Like, it doesn't feel like I'm taking medicine, but man, my stomach doesn't hurt anymore. And every time I rip a doob, I can sit down and focus on what I'm doing. So I think that's like a nice, very adult feeling.
Yeah. It's like I lived with a dugout in my pocket for as long as my pocket was big enough to have a dugout in it. And it's not like I was smoking oneies on the way to wait tables for like 4 hours because I was trying to escape anywhere. Hell no, dude. I was trying to focus and remember like which table like needed iced tea and which table needed like 3 more Sprites. And like that just little tip of those cannabinoids was enough to like help me slow down, focus my thoughts a little bit, and get to where I needed to be. And hey, cannabis is not exact. I'm sure you can hear some episodes where I'm like, okay, I gotta put this joint down. I cannot put a sentence together. And hey, that's all part of it. You know what I mean? Like I'm in control of my own titration, and sometimes I like to choose rolling up another joint. But it's mostly there to help me, and then also like, hey, I like a little treat now and again. I think my initial love for like the whole profile, the whole like spice altogether actually did start with some ground pepper, because when I was 4, probably, I grabbed the like bulk McCormick's black pepper. Oh, you can just close your eyes and imagine the tin. Now, one side flips up and it's got like the little dots. It's got the little tiny holes. Now the other side flips up and it's like a big old chunky hole for you to just say your recipe calls for a 1/4 cup of ground McCormick's black pepper. Oh, I don't know what you're making, but that's there for you to pour it out. So I open that and I'm just curious 4-year-old in the spice cabinet smelling all the spices, because why wouldn't I be, right? And I go straight for this black pepper. I don't know if I've gotten into this one. Open the big part, smell into that. Don't really smell much.
Oh.
Yeah, so I breathed into it. Okay, well, that made a lot of that black pepper come up through those tiny little holes and go right into my tiny little eyes and nose and face. And it was an experience. Like, I mean, I have a vivid memory. I know exactly what that cabinet looked like. I know exactly what the shower they threw me into looked like to like wash this pepper off my face. So intimate experience, you know what I mean? I think pepper is, and capsaicin, those things, it is interesting because like even pepper spray, like super concentrated, doesn't really do damage to your skin. It's all just like an inflammation response that your body provides. It's like, oh no. So anybody's face who gets all swole up or whatever from getting hit with the pepper spray, that's just like a reaction to like an overwhelming amount of this compound and not something that is actually going to burn you up. So it's interesting that we have these compounds that will light you up, will make you feel really spicy, will make you feel like your body is on fire, produce that same response, but not actually burn you up at all.
That's interesting. I also have a core memory of pepper.
Oh, please share it with us.
This is more recent. It was just maybe in the past 3 or 4 years. I went to dinner at my family's house and I didn't want to show up empty-handed. So I fresh ground some black pepper in my little mortar and pestle. And then I loaded it into like a fancy pepper shaker. And I was like, I'm going to bring fresh ground pepper. Like, They have enough. My mom's Italian. She made a feast. So I didn't need to bring, I just was in the mood to show up not empty handed. And so I'm like, this is kind of cute, like some fresh, like cracked pepper. You know, my family's not a pepper family. So this is a nice little treat for them. So they all sprinkled a little pepper on their dinner and took their first bite, and they all started choking because they're not used to the fresh pepper. So
yes.
everyone at the table
chokes her family out at the holidays.
Dude, they're literally choking. Like everyone at the table is fucking choking, bro. And I am laughing because I'm like, have you guys never eaten pepper? This is crazy. To this day, they bring up the pepper incident because they were all severely. My mom's like choking and screaming, like, "What kind of pepper is this?" I'm like, "It's literally just cracked pepper."
Wow. For the record, if you showed up at my house, there's some like fancy cracked pepper, freshly cracked, and some nice salt and some nice butter. Like, hey, we can be friends. You showed up to my house with that stuff. Like, we're hanging out. We're all sneezing around this thing, passing it around the table.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. Now, you know, hard times. Butter is not even an option at this point, but a little salt and pepper, I think I can manage. Bring into a dinner party.
Have you ever made your own butter by just shaking the hell out of some cream?
No, you know, I don't even want to admit this publicly. I'm just not a dairy person. You know what I mean? So every once in a while, I will treat myself to some butter, but generally, no. Do you? I think isn't that why people have kids, to make them shake the milk in a water bottle?
You know, my kid does not know what a churn is yet. But, you know, it is a fun little project you can do. You get a little mason jar, you throw some fresh, heavy cream in there, you shake the hell out of it, and you get butter. And then you get, you know, buttercream or whatever. You put a little salt on that, sprinkle on some bread. I mean, you're in some good shape. So you can shake the hell out of some almond milk. You can try that. If you get butter, please let me know. I don't think you get almond butter from that, but.
Hey, listeners, thanks so much for listening to our DIY food podcast. We really love having you guys here week after week. Two stoners, one brain.
I'm just trying to
talk about spice without talking about food, though. In our defense, they naturally go together. It all comes full circle. Milkweed.
It's.
I know when I chug a glass of cream, I need to smoke a joint after.
You can easily chug a glass of cream by just spreading that same amount of cream on a piece of toast and calling it breakfast.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh, that's so good.
One of the I got like one last little pepper fact here. I don't know if it's anything we want to get into, but I'm trying to search for other compounds in black pepper that are also found in cannabis. And we know, like, just from the work we've seen with the VSCs lately and the Tropicana sulfurs, we're still finding and naming compounds in cannabis that contribute to the flavor, aroma, effect. So there's no saying that we couldn't find some piperine later in cannabis, but it's an alkaloid of pyridine, which is found in a ton of things. That turns into piperidine, which is found in black pepper, which is the thing that makes you sneeze. It's the thing that kind of gives you that like soma response in your nose.
Oh.
It's kind of the thing that is activating your saliva glands to kind of keep producing. So there's no reason to say like we couldn't find a compound similar to that in flower like this, in some cannabis, in all cannabis. We already find the initial alkaloid, pyridine, in cannabis smoke. So we know that there's like some presence of this already. But
that's very interesting.
Yeah. And I really feel like if you take any of the spices that we have in this corner of the wheel, cinnamon, clove, cumin, even anise, and start looking at the compounds in these fruits, vegetables, spices, you're going to find many overlapping compounds in cannabis. And I think that those things contribute to why we get these in our profile, in our whole wheel, but also like shows you just kind of like how crazy cannabis can get and how many compounds we're dealing with and why we're getting these like buttery OG popcorn flavors and chili verde flavors. And then something that is just almost like exclusively black pepper, which I'm sure you've smelled before. That's not a profile that is going to make it very far onto the shelves, but it's definitely something you get like a dull black pepper scent pretty commonly, I would say.
I think that's so interesting because where my brain went on that was how we categorize cannabis as a plant, because it has a lot of the same characteristics as other aromatic herbs, like food-based herbs. And the more we learn about it, like obviously we know we can make edibles, and we don't necessarily, weed flowers are not a food product outright. You're not going to go to the farm and pick a nug and take a bite of it like an apple.
Someday,
You know,
Amanda,
so it's not,
someday.
yeah, like it's not quite a food herb in that sense. I mean, I guess you could technically go and eat like nibble on some basil. I mean, there's food herbs that you can eat straight out of the garden that are leafy things. But I just think that's really interesting that it has so many other similar characteristics to these aromatic herb families. I just think that's so fascinating.
Yeah, it's really neat. And kind of as we explore the wheel, I think that we'll find things like the mint family, which is known to have tons of cannabinoids and tons of variety, where the overlap is even overlappier.
That's true. And the Cannabaceae family of plants, which is hemp, hops, cannabis, also has a couple of berries. Now, it's a very small family. You can jump to our episode on Intro to Botany episode from way back when, where we talked about that. But it does have food in that family. Berries.
Yeah, yeah. And as I'm tearing into this Blue Dream over here that
love.
I'm writing about, and it's so funny. I want to just, you can read about this next month in the Oregon Leaf, but we decided on Blue Dream as a strain of the month. And I thought, okay, I didn't win this argument. And then I get this jar of Blue Dream and I go, damn, oh, you know what? This is good. This is good weed. This smells good. This is a great profile. This has been not lost because it's still, like a number one seller all up and down the West Coast. But in a way, like pot snobs like myself have sort of forgotten that profile. I think Amanda has a specific affinity for really good Blue Dream. So she's always going to gravitate towards it if it's good. But yeah, I've been reminded with the Jack Herrer a couple of weeks ago. Like anytime I go in search of older strains done well, my palate is always pleased. So it's fun, and like seeking out the variety is half the novelty of it for me. So I hope we can make things a little easier for folks.
I love that. I think Blue Dream fell out of favor because it became over popularized. It's been as hyped up as it should be. I think it saturated the market at a time when people were looking for new flavors and a lot of new genetics were coming out. So it was easy to like seek out other things. But I genuinely, of course, I'm biased because you're right. I fucking love it. But I think it's a strain that changed the face of cannabis. And I think it will always have a place in the industry, in the community as a flavor. Like that is a peak moment of cannabis history. And I think it's here to stay, like a generational strain. Like for years and years, we will continue to see this strain have its place in the market.
Yeah, and that was the conversation that I had with my friend. Blue Dream was what runts and GMO is to the modern consumer, just starting to get a little tired of these flavors and these profiles, but they're still impressive. And they're not going anywhere. And anytime somebody brings that back up, we're all going to be like pleased to get a jar of it.
Swinging it back to the Beta Carry, we know it's one of the top 14 terpenes. We know it's in most strains. But I think if anything, as you continue to try out strains and you're looking for new flavors, try to find that flavor in those strains. Really seek it out, because I think strains that you really catch that spice, you really catch that flavor, are going to be standouts and definitely like worth looking for and keeping kind of in the medicine cabinet, if you will.
Yeah, medicine cabinet especially. And if you're somebody like Amanda or I that smokes often, find something that is beta C dominant and then pay attention to how it makes you feel afterward. and compare that to your typical experience. Because I think, even for a heavy cannabis user like me, who has a relatively blunt endocannabinoid system, I can always tell something cuts through the noise, as I refer to it. It's like, it really stands out, even if I've been smoking all day. Oh, that thing left an impression.
Yeah.
So yeah, just do your own test at home and let us know how your experiments went.
Well, we survived another episode of the Smoking Spot. Shout out to the Oregon Leaf and the California Leaf, because they actually gave us a little shout out last month in both of their magazines on their podcast page.
Yeah, much love to the new listeners. The fun thing about our back catalog is you can kind of dig through it by topic or by guest and dig into the things that interest you. Or if, you just got a big old crush on Amanda and I, you can go start on episode 1 and grit your way through those first few episodes as we figured it out. We left all that up there for you to see and move on to the current stage where, hey, the podcast is going pretty well.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Let's keep the conversation going.
Follow us on Instagram at @the.smokingspot. And if you've stuck around this long, rate us 5 stars.
And don't forget to subscribe to get the first updates on future episodes.
Said no matter what kind of pain and anguish life may bring you, oh, smoke it up, hold it down, and don't ever stop. Well, you can always find your smoking spot. Yeah, you can always find your smoking spot.
Hey, Smoking Spot fans. We're here to tell you about the newest launch from Centelligence Projects.
Over the last year, we've created the Cannabis Aroma Wheel. It's a sensory tool designed to help connoisseurs take their knowledge to the next level. So whether you're a bud tender, dispensary owner, cultivator, or you just love the smell of weed, you can better appreciate the cannabis in front of you.
Get your copy of the most detailed sensory tool built specifically for the cannabis industry and order your Cannabis Aroma Wheel today at centelligenceproject.com.